He told his parents he was sleeping at a friend's house just down the road. But the 14-year-old boy was actually traveling 30 miles away to meet an 18-year-old he thought was his gaming friend. What happened next in that apartment was so horrific that it would haunt investigators forever. The teenager used duct tape to bind the boy's wrists and ankles, then slashed his throat with a knife, killing him within seconds. But that wasn't even the worst part. Evidence found at the scene showed there had been sexual activity between them shortly before the murder. Blood covered the bed. Blood covered the floor. Blood covered the laptop. And after this sadistic attack, the killer actually took photos of the boy's bloodied body and sent them to 2 of his online friends, like trophies from a hunt. Police found the duct tape in the bedroom trash and outside in the bin. They found DNA on the tape matching the victim's leg hair. They found blood-stained clothes. They found a tube of lubricant covered in blood. The judge would later call it a sexual and sadistic murder driven by the killer's twisted desires. But here's what makes this story even more terrifying. This wasn't the killer's first time. 3 years before he murdered this innocent boy, he had been arrested for raping and sexually assaulting a 15-year-old. The police knew about him. They had investigated him. And then they let him go. They did nothing. And because of that decision, a 14-year-old who dreamed of becoming a pilot died bound, assaulted, and bleeding out on a bedroom floor 30 miles from home while his parents thought he was safe at a sleepover down the street. This is the story of how a predator groomed a child online for months, how warning signs were everywhere, how police ignored their own evidence, and how a family's worst nightmare became reality because the system failed. Breck entered the world on a day when the streets were filled with celebration. Born on St. Patrick's Day, the sounds of festivities echoed outside the hospital windows as his mother held him for the first time. She dressed him in old-fashioned English outfits, the kind that made strangers stop and stare. People kept mistaking him for a girl because he had such delicate, beautiful features. His mother couldn't have been prouder. Those early years were the happiest of her life, filled with innocent joy that she didn't know would be ripped away. As a little boy, Breck wasn't like other older brothers. His younger sister remembers sitting next to him at restaurants, feeling completely safe and happy. Most people expected an older brother to be annoying, to push his siblings away, but Breck was different. He was helpful in every way imaginable. She couldn't have asked for a better older brother. He was the kind of kid who seemed too good to be true. His other sister saw him as a guiding light in their lives. He taught them things constantly, always coming up with creative games to play. She would follow him around, tapping his shoulder, trying to get his attention because she thought he was the coolest person in the world. That's how all the younger kids saw him. He was their protector, their teacher, their hero. But then 2013 came around, and everything started to change in ways that seemed small at first. Breck met someone new that year, a friend he made online. By the time the year ended, he seemed like a completely different person. The light in his eyes had dimmed. He was disinterested in family activities, didn't want to participate in things he used to love. Something was wrong, but nobody could quite put their finger on what it was. His mother noticed he was arguing with her constantly, fighting about things that never used to be issues. His sister thought it was just about computer time, about spending too much time gaming. She had no idea something much darker was happening beneath the surface. None of them did. The danger was invisible, hiding in the digital world where predators know exactly how to camouflage themselves. Here's the terrifying part that nobody saw coming. The person on the other end of that computer screen wasn't another teenager at all. He seemed incredibly young when he spoke, his whole persona designed to put a 14-year-old boy at ease. He presented himself as just another one of the guys, someone who understood gaming and technology and teenage life. That was the disguise that made him so dangerous. When Breck's mother finally took away his technology, trying to break whatever hold the stranger had on her son, Breck wasn't happy about it. She sat him down and made him promise to stop spending time with this person online. He looked at her and said okay. She thought that was the end of it. She actually believed she had solved the problem. But the predator was still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his next opportunity. For a brief moment, life seemed to return to normal. Breck started enjoying time with his family again. Everything felt right. His mother thought she had fixed everything, that she had protected her son. She had no idea the predator was planning his next move, that danger was still circling her child like a shark waiting to strike. Looking back at Breck's early childhood, he was the kind of kid every parent dreams of having. When his mother went to the hospital to have triplets, he was only 2 years old, and he cried when she left. It tugged at her heartstrings, but after that day, he embraced his role as big brother without a single complaint. Other children got jealous of new siblings, but not Breck. At just 2 years old, he would toddle over to fetch diapers from the changing table when asked. He liked having responsibility. He was mature beyond his years from the very start. At school, Breck played it cool, pretending he didn't know his sisters, acting tough with his friends. But at home, the mask came off. He was sweet, intelligent, and protective of his family. He genuinely loved them and showed it every single day. His mother barely had to discipline him because he was naturally well-behaved. He got good grades easily, not just because he tried hard, but because he was naturally brilliant. He dreamed of becoming a pilot, and his mother thought that ambition was incredible. She would drive him to air cadet training, and those car rides became some of her favorite memories. It was just the two of them, no distractions, chatting and listening to music. She didn't know these moments were numbered. That time was running out faster than anyone could imagine. As Breck got older, his passion shifted toward technology. He loved his devices, loved gaming and computing with an intensity that consumed him. His siblings would gather around him, watching him play games, completely mesmerized by his skill. They didn't want to play themselves. They just wanted to watch him because he made it look like art. They idolized everything he did. Then came the divorce. Breck's parents separated while the children were still in primary school, and it was hard on everyone. The family tried their best to make it work, going back and forth between two homes. Despite the difficulty, they remained close. Because of the separation, Breck had to switch schools, which turned out to have an unexpected silver lining. He reconnected with friends from primary school and was invited into a gaming group. His mother was actually pleased. These were kids she knew, kids whose parents she had history with. Felt safe. The boys would hang out at school during the day, then race home to get on their computers and enter their virtual second life. Breck loved it. He invested money and effort into creating the perfect gaming setup. His mother knew where these friends lived, knew their families. Everything seemed fine. She had no reason to worry. That's what makes this story so terrifying. The danger came from where she least expected it. As Breck grew older, he started playing more violent games, which was ironic because he was such a peaceful person in real life. When the family first got a computer, it was in the kitchen where his mother could easily monitor what was happening. But as Breck got older and proved himself responsible, he earned the privilege of having his own computer in his room. The door stayed open, and she could hear conversations, see what was on the screens. At least she thought she could see everything. Breck had 3 monitors. One showed all the players and their usernames. Another displayed the game action. The third showed messages popping up constantly. It was an impressive setup, and his mother could understand why he loved gaming this way. What she didn't understand yet was the danger hiding in plain sight, waiting to pounce when nobody was looking close enough. One day, everything changed with the sound of a voice. A police detective who later worked on this case spent years viewing disturbing content shared online, learning how predators operate in the digital world. He discovered there was no limit to what people would do online, no accounting for the twisted interests some people developed. What shocked him most was how easily people separated their online behavior from their real-life actions, as if the internet wasn't real, as if their victims weren't real people. Breck's mother was listening to the gaming conversations like she always did when she heard something that made her blood run cold. A deeper voice, much deeper than the voices of 13 and 14-year-old boys. It sounded like an adult man, and alarm bells started ringing in her head immediately. This wasn't right. This wasn't one of Breck's school friends. The image that jumped into her mind was horrifying. She pictured some creepy middle-aged man sitting behind a computer screen, trying to lure a young boy into doing something sexual. That's exactly what she thought this was. When she asked Breck about the stranger, He told her this person ran the gaming server, the best and fastest server he had ever used. The stranger had a name. He told Breck he was 17 years old with an amazing job in New York City, working for the US government on contract with flexible hours. Breck's sister never even heard the stranger's name. She had no idea who this person was because the manipulation was so carefully contained. The stranger portrayed himself as a computer engineer with a wildly successful business, claiming to be some kind of covert operative. He painted a picture of a fantastic lifestyle that would make any teenager jealous. He was smart, successful, funny, and shared all of Breck's interests. But red flags were everywhere for anyone who looked closely enough. His mother didn't want her 14-year-old son gaming with 17 or 18-year-olds anyway. She'd rather he stuck with kids his own age. She tried talking to Breck about her concerns, but he defended the stranger every single time. When she questioned how someone with such an important career had time to game with teenagers, Breck had an answer ready. He works his own hours. When she asked if Breck had seen this person's face, the answer was no because of the secret nature of his work. There was an explanation for everything, carefully crafted lies that fit together perfectly. The stranger would talk to Breck's mother directly, acting friendly and open. He'd say hello, ask how she was doing, mention he was in New York City. But when she asked about the weather or tried to gather information about his life there, his answers were always vague. He never had any real New York stories, even though he claimed to live there. Nothing about him added up, but he was so good at manipulation that Breck couldn't see through it. Things got worse when dinner time became a battleground. Breck's mother had a rule that everyone came to dinner because she wanted to spend time with her children, wanted to talk to them and connect as a family. The stranger twisted this into something sinister, planting thoughts in Breck's head. Why is your mom making you eat if you're not hungry? Why does she insist you eat when she wants to eat? He was driving a wedge between mother and son, acting like another parent, undermining her authority at every turn. By summer, Breck's personality had transformed completely. He stopped being cooperative about things she asked him to do. He questioned everything, and his mother couldn't tell if this was normal teenage rebellion or something far more dangerous. He wanted to drop out of Air Corps training, something he had always dreamed of doing because he wanted to be a pilot. Now suddenly he wanted to quit and just keep gaming. His family was shocked. He had always wanted to pursue flying. What had changed? He became sullen, preferring his computer to family time. His sisters felt far away from him, like they were losing their brother to something they couldn't understand. His mother started checking on him more frequently, and that's when she noticed the change in what appeared on his screens. Instead of funny content that made them laugh together, images of the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz would fly across the screen on her broomstick. The next time she came to call him for dinner, Hitler would goose-step across the screen. The stranger was turning his mother into the villain, making her look like the bad guy when all she was trying to do was protect her child. The manipulation tactics were textbook grooming. The stranger used multiple methods, figuring out exactly what Breck needed and liked, finding common ground and building on it. He contacted Breck daily, creating a fantasy version of himself that seemed perfect because none of the boys could verify any facts about him. He never showed his face online. He never gave them real information they could check. Just like predators do in person, taking victims to isolated locations, the same thing happened online. Breck was being taken to better gaming servers, other websites, different channels of communication because he was special. The stranger made him feel chosen, important, superior to his other friends. Breck saw in this person everything he wanted to be. Above all his real friends, this stranger meant something deeper. He represented who Breck aspired to become. The day his mother decided to call the police, she was terrified but knew in her gut that something was seriously wrong. She gave them the predator's real name, his alias, where he lived, and all the lies he was telling the boys. She felt relieved when she hung up the phone, believing she had done the right thing to protect her son. She immediately took away all of Breck's technology to make a point about how serious this situation was. But she made one critical mistake. She missed a small MP3 player, and that's how Breck recorded the family intervention meeting. The stranger had told him to record it. They held a meeting with Breck, trying to reason with him. He defended the stranger, insisting he was a good guy. His parents suggested meeting this person for coffee. Breck said the stranger wouldn't want to meet them. They asked what about just meeting the dads then, without the moms. Still no. The stranger apparently thought parents were too judgmental. That's when they laid down the law. If this person wouldn't meet them, they had to forbid Breck from gaming, speaking, or socializing with him because they didn't know who he was. But here's where it got exponentially more dangerous. The predator now knew the parents were onto him, so everything went underground and became more secretive. That's when the stranger sent Breck a brand new smartphone so they could communicate without anyone knowing. The mother thought she was doing the right thing by forbidding contact, but she didn't realize this is exactly what predators count on. They use parental restrictions to make parents look like villains, driving the child further into their clutches. When the parents tried going to the police, they hit a frustrating wall. Where's the evidence? A child chatting with an older person online wasn't enough. There was no grooming offense happening within the legal framework required to take action. What the mother discovered too late was devastating. The police closed the investigation that very same evening because they didn't recognize the signs of grooming she had described. The warning signs were there. The stranger was separating Breck from his friend group, making him special, making him believe in a fantasy life. Breck was so enamored that he had no way of checking if anything was real. He was being brainwashed and nobody could stop it. Christmas came, and it turned into the perfect holiday because Breck had his computers taken away. For 1 week off technology, his mother got to see more of her son, got to spend real time with him. That's all she wanted, to spend time with her children instead of having them separated in their own digital worlds. When Breck got his technology back and started gaming with his school friends again, he seemed normal. Happy, relaxed, doing his chores, coming to meals when asked. His mother heard that distinctive deep voice was gone. Everything seemed back to normal. She thought they had won. In early 2014, Breck did a Spanish exchange trip, something his mother never got to do when she was young. She took pictures of him before he left, and as he walked away, she remembered feeling so proud. He was becoming a young man. She never expected those would be the last images she'd take of him alive. She never expected that walk away would be the final time she'd see him breathing. When Breck returned from Spain, his mother was away, so his father picked him up from the airport. Everyone noticed how confident he seemed. He had met a girl there and was excited to talk about his trip. His mother messaged him saying she couldn't wait to hear about it, and he replied that he couldn't wait to tell her. Those would be among their last exchanges. A few days later, Breck asked his father if he could visit a friend from school. He didn't usually do sleepovers, so his sister was actually excited for him that he had something different planned. But Breck had never lied before. He had never snuck off before. He had never been deceptive. So when he left with his devices to game and compute, poor Breck had no idea how that evening was going to end. He had no idea he was walking into a carefully laid trap. His mother woke up the next morning with an overwhelming sense of doom. Then she got a message from the children's father saying Breck didn't come home last night, that he stayed at his friend's house, and they couldn't reach him. She immediately started to panic. When his father called back, it was the worst phone call any parent could ever receive. He said he didn't know how to tell her this, but the stranger had killed Breck. In that moment, everything inside her died. A huge part of her ceased to exist. She couldn't stop screaming. She had to be sedated. She couldn't believe it because she had known from the very start that this person was dangerous. But she never imagined he was a murderer. When investigators first heard the emergency call made by the killer, they noticed he wanted to be in control. He was measured. There was no real emotion in his voice. The call handler was trying to understand what happened, but the killer wanted to tell his version of events. His story was that there had been a struggle, an altercation, because Breck was apparently uncontrollable with emotion. The account sounded rehearsed to investigators. That's why he kept saying, don't stop me, because if he got interrupted, he wouldn't remember the fabricated story he had created. He admitted to causing Breck's death but tried to claim self-defense. The fact that he went and sat in the shower for a while before calling the police told investigators everything. He was trying to get his story straight, trying to compose himself before making the call. When police arrived, The killer was arrested at the scene. He tried to play it down, acting compliant, almost separating himself from what he had done. Yes, he killed someone, but supposedly it wasn't his fault. Back at the house, Breck's sisters came home to find police cars outside. 2 female officers approached, asking where their brother was. Then their father arrived, and the shouting started. Loud, anguished screaming that filled the house. They had no idea what was happening. Their father sounded like he was in physical pain. Eventually, he came into the living room, sat on the couch with bloodshot eyes, and told them Breck was dead. They just sat there letting the horrible truth sink in. That was the first time they heard it, the first time they felt that crushing blow. From that moment forward, their lives would never be the same. When a digital forensics specialist arrived at the scene, the apartment was very tidy. In the lounge, there was a laptop on the sofa belonging to the killer. They were asked to seize a laptop from the bedroom, but they hadn't realized Breck's body was still on the floor. He was covered in blood. The bed was covered in blood. The laptop was covered in blood. The specialist was then directed to the bathroom where 3 mobile phones, some hard drives, and USB sticks had been placed in water in the sink. These items were a priority because they needed to be dried out so data could be extracted. Detectives and forensic experts were looking for various types of evidence. DNA from hair and skin, signs of a struggle, any breakages in the house, anything in the environment that could provide clues about what happened. In the bedroom garbage, they found duct tape. There was also duct tape in the bin outside. Forensic material suggested there had been sexual activity between Breck and the killer at some point. They found DNA on the tape matching hairs from Breck's legs. They found blood-stained clothes. They found a tube of lubricant with blood on it. This evidence strongly suggested that Breck had been tied up and assaulted. The killer's story about Breck being uncontrollable with emotion didn't match the evidence at all. The physical proof showed he had been incapacitated, tied up, unable to defend himself. The last activity on Breck's laptop was at 9:15 in the morning of his murder. The emergency call didn't go to police until around 11 o'clock. So for 2 hours before he was killed, Breck was still using his laptop. He would have been completely unaware of what was coming. He was just there doing what he loved, playing with his computers, thinking he was safe with someone he thought was his friend. Police found extensive evidence at the killer's apartment. Breck had been lured there with clear premeditation. They found evidence of pizza, which Breck loved. They found a bag of Breck's belongings, and all his devices had been destroyed except one. For some reason, one device was left undestroyed in his bag, and that helped police get crucial evidence they were struggling to obtain from the other damaged devices. They found a hard drive that had been opened with the chip scored across the back, rendering it useless. But the important breakthrough was Breck's tablet, which they were able to access. That's where most of the communication data between Breck and the killer came from. In January, all the communication showed the killer was nervous about Breck going to Spain for a week. He would be with other friends somewhere else, and the killer didn't like that. He could lose his grip on Breck. The killer panicked and asked Breck to research an online platform supposedly being developed. Part of the communication involved the killer claiming he was dying or ill, and that Breck was going to take over this supposed company. The words were chilling. "You are in a man's world now, so you need to step up." This was how the killer formulated his plan to get Breck from his home to an address 30 miles away. They supposedly had to speak in person for this business handover to happen properly. Breck would have been looking forward to seeing his friend in person, excited about this supposed opportunity. But as a 14-year-old, he wouldn't have recognized the language as coercive control, which is exactly what it was. For a teenager, this was the ultimate dream, being handed a company worth millions that he was going to run. It was arranged at the beginning of February that Breck would visit. His parents didn't know this, of course. The killer told Breck exactly how to set this up. On the day of the visit, Breck told his father he was going to a friend's house 2 roads away. He was instructed not to say anything until he was actually at the killer's address. So his father thought Breck was just around the corner, when in reality he was 30 miles away, alone in terrible danger. 1 month after he was killed on his mother's birthday, and then buried on his own birthday on St. Patrick's Day. His mother did her best to have his funeral on his birthday because it made it feel more special, and his birthday was always going to be an impossible day anyway. It was a beautiful funeral. The whole town came out. They had a procession, and it was gorgeous. But then everybody went home, and the family was left alone with their grief. It was only after everyone left, after the chaos died down, that his sisters started figuring out how to live with grief, how to learn to live with the gaping hole Breck left in their lives. His mother stayed in bed for a year. She only got up for meetings about Breck or for the triplet school events, but she was like a zombie. Her daughters watched their mother almost die inside, and they couldn't do anything to help her. They had never seen pain like that before, the way grief hits a mother who loses her child. The triplets not only lost their brother, they lost their normally functioning mother. Luckily, they had each other, all going through the same experience. They were all 12 years old. They carried each other through it. They couldn't have survived without one another. When people saw the killer in court, they were shocked. He looked very young, didn't look his age at all. He was very quiet, showed no emotion. Breck's mother was stunned because he looked like a teenager himself, wearing a long-sleeved black t-shirt like something Breck might have worn. She glared at him, thinking how they could have been friends, how he could have come over for pizza, how he could have been part of their family. Instead, he destroyed it. Throughout the investigation, the killer maintained his self-defense story. Then suddenly, he changed his plea. In court, Breck's mother noticed her barrister looking at her strangely. The killer came in, and when asked for his plea, he said guilty. You could have heard a pin drop. Nobody expected this psychopathic liar to change his plea. The only way for him to take back control over the situation was to be honest and plead guilty. This saved the family from sitting through weeks of horrific testimony. But during sentencing, they still had to sit through detailed accounts of what Breck endured. When his mother thinks about those final moments, she imagines Breck realizing his mother was right all along. But it was too late. The truth came too late. On January 12, 2015, the killer was sentenced to life with a minimum of 25 years. Breck's sister doesn't think justice was truly served. 25 years isn't enough for the planning, the manipulation, the torture her brother and whole family endured. The killer is truly the most disgusting human being. Nobody could imagine someone so young could be so cunning and manipulative, able to do this to a child. The killer had a record. He had groomed another boy in the United States and boys in the UK. He had sexually assaulted a boy his own age. He was known to have indecent images of boys on his computer. Although the killer looked very young, he was an 18-year-old man grooming a 14-year-old child. The fact that they found child pornography on his computer wasn't surprising. He was a predator through and through. Breck's other sister says her mother is the most powerful woman she knows. So strong for fighting to live through that pain, for getting out of bed and choosing to keep going. Then she got up and started a charity, managing to find some light in Breck's death. She makes sure what happened to Breck doesn't happen to anyone else. His mother believes if Breck had seen another boy's story, he probably would have been the typical teenager saying that could never happen to me. That's why she decided to set up a charity with help from the local community. There was so much to learn. When she teaches about Breck's story, she tries to make sure young people look after each other because parents won't always see what's happening or recognize it. But friends and siblings see personality changes. They see what's happening on the platforms, what's being said behind the scenes. The person being groomed finds it very difficult to see what's happening to them. That's why she speaks about Breck's story, so other parents can better help their children stay safe when they meet people online. She feels terrible that Breck didn't get to reach his full potential. He was so clever, far surpassing any intelligence she ever had. He was innately good and kind, taken from this world far too soon. His sister remembers him as a great older brother, driven by his passions, truly someone to look up to. His other sister says whenever she does something cool, she likes to think he can see it too. She doesn't know where he is, but she likes to think he'd be proud of her because she's so far from the 12-year-old he knew. She wishes he could get to know who she's become. The triplets lost their guide, their protector, their hero. A mother lost her firstborn child, her special boy born on St. Patrick's Day. The world lost a brilliant young person who wanted to fly planes and change the world with technology. All because a predator hid behind a screen, built a fantasy, and lured an innocent child to his death. This is why parents need to pay attention. This is why friends need to speak up. This is why we all need to understand that the internet isn't some separate world where real harm can't happen. Behind every screen is a real person, and some of those people are monsters waiting for their chance to strike.